Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. Cynthia and I had been married for 7 years. She was the kind of woman who could light up a room with her smile, the type of partner you build a life with. At least that's what I thought. Then there was Jake, my best friend since college. He was practically family, the guy I trusted with my secrets, my business, my life. The three of us were close, inseparable even. Cynthia and Jake had a natural chemistry, but I never thought much of it. In fact, I liked that my wife and best friend got along so well. It was a relief not to juggle separate parts of my life. "Jake, you're here more than I am," I'd joked once when I came home to find him in the kitchen with Cynthia, laughing about something or other. "Well, someone has to make sure she doesn't burn the house down while you're working," he shot back with a grin. Cynthia laughed and I joined in, blissfully ignorant of the dark truth that was brewing just beneath the surface. The cracks started to show one Thursday evening when I left the office earlier than usual. A project had wrapped up ahead of schedule, and I decided to surprise Cynthia with dinner. But as I stepped into the house, the atmosphere felt off. I heard her voice coming from the living room, low and urgent. "No, he has no idea," she said, her words clipped. "It's all going according to plan. I'll talk to you later. Love you." I froze. She hadn't seen me yet, and for a moment I debated whether to announce myself or slip back out the door. But the knot forming in my stomach urged me forward. "Who was that?" I asked, stepping into the room. Cynthia jumped, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. "Daniel, you scared me. That was someone from my yoga class." "A yoga classmate?" I raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you end yoga calls with 'love you'?" She laughed, but it was strained. "Oh, you know how we are. Just being playful. Don't read into it." Her explanation didn't sit right, but I let it go. Or at least I pretended to. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Cynthia slept soundly beside me. Her words played over and over in my mind. "No, he has no idea. It's all going according to plan." What plan? And who was she talking to? The next day, curiosity got the better of me. Cynthia's phone was password protected, but after 7 years of marriage, I knew her well enough to guess the code. It was our anniversary date. Typical. While she was in the shower, I scrolled through her messages, my heart racing. And that's when I saw it. A thread with Jake. "Can't wait to see you tonight," Jake wrote. "Me too. Just a few more weeks and we'll be free of him," Cynthia responded. I stared at the screen, my vision swimming. Free of me? What the hell did that mean? I read further, my chest tightening with every line. They weren't just having an affair, they were plotting against me. Cynthia had been falsifying expense reports at my company, and Jake was feeding false information to potential investors. Together they were setting me up to fail. I didn't confront them, not yet. I needed proof, something undeniable. I wasn't just going to expose their affair, I was going to dismantle their plan piece by piece and watch it crumble around them. Over the next few days I set my plan in motion. First, I hired a private investigator to follow them. Every text, every rendezvous, every whispered conversation in a dimly lit restaurant, it was all documented in excruciating detail. The private investigator even managed to snap photos of them together, holding hands in public like they were free of consequences. Next, I bugged my house, hiding tiny recording devices in places they'd never think to look. Under the coffee table, inside a potted plant, even in the light fixture above the dining table. Listening to the recordings was like swallowing poison, but each word they spoke fueled my resolve. At work, I started scrutinizing Cynthia's expense reports. I'd always trusted her to handle the finances, but now I saw the discrepancies glaring back at me. Payments routed to unfamiliar accounts, invoices for services we'd never used. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. I brought in my company's legal team to quietly investigate further. And then there were the fake investor leads. Jake was supposed to be helping me bring new partners on board for the company's expansion. Instead, he'd been steering me toward dead ends and questionable contacts, all while siphoning confidential information to use against me. It was like watching someone take a wrecking ball to the empire I'd spent years building. A few days later, the opportunity presented itself. Cynthia had mentioned she'd be working late at the office, and Jake had casually dropped that he had a business dinner to attend. I didn't buy it for a second. I called the private investigator I'd hired and asked him to tail them. He didn't need much direction. He knew what I was looking for. A few hours later, I received a text from him. "They're at the Paramount Hotel. I've got everything you need. Meet me tomorrow." The next day, the investigator showed up at my door with a thick envelope in hand. He handed it over without saying a word. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside were a series of photos, each one a gut punch. There was Jake and Cynthia standing in the hotel lobby, looking entirely too comfortable with each other. Jake was holding her hand, leaning in close, whispering something that made her laugh. They walked hand in hand to the elevator, the chemistry between them undeniable. The final shot was taken as they entered their hotel room together, a look of anticipation on both their faces. The sequence of photos confirmed what I had already known. They had been sneaking around for months. That was the final nail in the coffin. But I wasn't done. I still wanted to catch them in the act, where their betrayal cut deepest. One evening, while I was working late, I parked a few blocks away from my house and waited. My car windows fogged up as the minutes ticked by, but I didn't care. Sure enough, Jake's car pulled into my driveway. I crept around to the side of the house, careful to stay out of sight. Through the living room window, I could see them sitting on the couch. Cynthia was perched on the edge, her body angled toward Jake as if she couldn't get close enough. Jake leaned back, relaxed, one arm draped over the backrest. They looked like they owned the place. "I've rerouted the funds to the offshore account," Cynthia said, her voice tinged with excitement. "Perfect," Jake replied, grinning. "By the time he figures it out, we'll be long gone." "You really think this will work?" she asked, a rare note of hesitation in her tone. Jake chuckled, leaning forward to take her hands in his. "Cynthia, trust me. We've planned this for months. He'll never see it coming." They shared a laugh, a sound so casual it made my stomach turn. I clenched my fists, my nails biting into my palms. The temptation to burst through the door and confront them on the spot was overwhelming, but I forced myself to stay calm. This wasn't the moment. Not yet. As I continued watching, the scene took a more painful turn. Jake leaned in closer to Cynthia, his hand brushing her cheek. "You know, I hate that we have to keep this a secret," he murmured. She smiled, resting her forehead against his. "Just a little longer," she whispered. Then they kissed. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. They kissed deeply, as if I didn't exist, as if the life Cynthia and I had built together was nothing more than a shadow. The kiss grew more passionate, and soon they were tangled together on the couch. Cynthia broke away, laughing softly. "Not here," she said, taking Jake's hand. "Let's go to the bedroom." Jake grinned, following her down the hallway that led to our bedroom. I moved quickly, sneaking around to a different window with a view of the bedroom. My hands shook as I positioned the small camera I'd brought with me, ensuring it captured every detail. The blinds were partially open, and though I hated myself for watching, I forced myself to record it all. Inside, they were oblivious. Clothes came off, and the intimacy that should have been mine was flaunted in front of me like a sick game. I clenched my jaw, swallowing the rage that threatened to boil over. When it was over, they lay tangled in each other's arms, whispering and laughing like they had all the time in the world. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the recording saving automatically to a secure drive. This was the proof I needed, not just of their affair, but of the depth of their betrayal. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of my revenge. The next week, I hosted a party at our home under the pretense of celebrating a major business milestone. My company had recently signed a lucrative contract, a deal I managed to secure after weeks of painstakingly undoing the damage caused by Cynthia and Jake's schemes. It was the perfect excuse to gather our closest friends, family, and colleagues, the people who mattered most to us, and Cynthia leapt at the chance to host. She loved being the center of attention, dazzling everyone with her charm and hospitality. As the house filled with laughter and clinking glasses, Cynthia was in her element, flitting effortlessly from group to group with her bright smile and easy banter. When Jake arrived late, his smug grin as he greeted me made my blood boil, but I maintained my composure. Little did either of them know, this wasn't just a celebration, it was the stage for the reckoning. "Hey man," Jake said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Hope I'm not too late." "Not at all," I replied coolly. "Glad you could make it." As the night progressed, the air grew thick with tension. The party carried on, laughter, chatter, clinking glasses, but beneath it all, a simmering storm was brewing. I watched as Cynthia, unaware of what was to come, floated around the room, accepting compliments and doling out flirtations, playing her part as the perfect hostess. Jake was by her side for much of the night, his presence like a constant reminder of the betrayal that had been eating away at me for months. At a certain point, I felt my anger surge again, like a tidal wave ready to break. I couldn't stand another second of pretending. I couldn't stomach the sight of Jake's smug face or the way Cynthia had so easily slipped into this game of deception. I looked over at the crowd, our closest friends and family, all of them unknowingly complicit in the lies I'd been living. It was time to expose everything. I signaled to the DJ to stop the music. A few seconds later, the room fell into an uneasy silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice calm yet carrying a sharp edge, "thank you all for being here tonight. We're here to celebrate a milestone in my business, and I appreciate the support everyone has shown me over the years. But tonight I also have something important to share with all of you." Cynthia's smile faltered slightly, but she quickly masked it with a forced laugh. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice high-pitched, attempting to seem oblivious. I turned to Jake, who had drifted to the bar, feigning casualness as he sipped his drink. He made no effort to hide the way his eyes lingered on Cynthia from a distance, his gaze betraying more than he probably intended. The rage simmered within me, but I forced myself to keep my voice steady. "I've spent weeks uncovering the truth," I continued, my eyes sweeping over the room. "The people you trust the most. Sometimes they're the ones who stab you in the back." I nodded to the screen behind me. With the press of a button, the video footage began to play. At first there was confusion, people shifting uncomfortably, murmuring to each other. But as the footage showed Cynthia and Jake laughing in the hotel lobby, entering a room together, and then the incriminating clips from our home, Cynthia and Jake in my living room plotting to ruin me, gasps erupted throughout the room. The air was electric with shock and disbelief. I saw Cynthia's face drain of color as she stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. Jake, on the other hand, stood frozen, his drink falling from his hand and crashing to the floor. "You," Cynthia whispered, but I didn't give her the chance to finish. "Don't even try to explain," I spat. "I've known for weeks. The affair, the lies, the plans to bankrupt me so you could take everything I've worked for and run away together. But it won't work. Not anymore." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the projector and the soft clinking of glasses as they were slowly set down by stunned guests. Jake stepped forward, his face red with anger. "You're out of your mind. This is insane," he yelled, voice shaking. "This is a setup." "You think I didn't know?" I replied, my voice a low growl. "I've been watching. I've been listening. You thought you could steal my life, my business, and my wife, and get away with it?" In a blind flash of fury, I lunged toward Jake. I didn't even think about it. My hand caught his collar, pulling him toward me. He was caught off guard, stumbling back, trying to break free. A scuffle ensued, my fists landing hard against his chest. He fought back, swinging wildly, but I was relentless. The rage I'd been holding in for so long was finally breaking free. "Stop! Stop!" Cynthia screamed, but her voice barely registered in my ears. All I could hear was the sound of my own breath, ragged and furious. The sound of the commotion must have drawn attention, because suddenly the door flew open and 2 uniformed police officers rushed inside. "What's going on here?" one of the officers barked, his hand on his holster. I froze, still panting, my hand gripping Jake's shirt. The officers had clearly been responding to something. Perhaps a neighbor had called, disturbed by the loud music and then the commotion. The house was nestled in a quiet neighborhood, and noise in these parts didn't go unnoticed for long. Before I could respond, Cynthia spoke up. "He's gone mad. He attacked Jake. He's ruining everything." Her voice was high-pitched, frantic. Jake, stumbling from the fight, seemed to regain his composure, though his face was pale and his shirt was torn. "He's the one who's crazy. I've been ambushed." The officers quickly stepped in, separating us and taking control of the situation. "You're both under arrest for assault," one of them declared, his voice steady and cold. "You'll have a chance to explain yourselves down at the station." Cynthia's protests were futile as the officers handcuffed me and Jake. In the chaos, the guests, friends, family, were stunned. No one knew exactly what to say. The atmosphere shifted from one of celebration to one of disbelief and shock. What had seemed like an innocent party had turned into a nightmare, and the betrayal was laid bare for everyone to see. As I was led out the door, I caught a glimpse of Cynthia, her face now streaked with tears. But there was no sympathy in my chest, no remorse. She had made her choice, and now she would face the consequences. At the station, things played out in a blur. I was booked for assault, but in the end, the truth of what had happened came to light. The recordings, The video footage and the investigation into the financial sabotage left no room for denial. The police were able to verify everything, and both Cynthia and Jake were charged with conspiracy, embezzlement, and fraud. Within a matter of days, everything unraveled. The affair was exposed to the public, and Cynthia's social standing crumbled. The media didn't let up, covering every sordid detail of the plot that had been uncovered. Jake's career was ruined, and his reputation in tatters. As for me, I walked away with my dignity and my business intact. The divorce proceedings were swift, and I was granted full control of everything I'd worked for. Jake and Cynthia, on the other hand, quickly saw their lives fall apart. With the evidence exposed, their relationship crumbled under public scrutiny. Friends and family turned away, their careers were ruined, and their reputations were irreparably damaged. The company they had stolen from, my company, pressed charges, and both were soon facing criminal charges for conspiracy, embezzlement, and fraud. After a lengthy investigation, they were found guilty and sentenced to prison. When they got out of prison, they clung to each other, trying to salvage what was left of their relationship. But the cracks in their bond deepened with each passing day, fueled by guilt, betrayal, and the weight of their actions. The emotional toll of everything they had lost proved too much to bear, and in the end, they couldn't outrun the damage they had done. Not just to me, but to themselves, and they finally broke up. The party had been the beginning of my revenge, but it was the final confrontation, when the world knew what they had done, that left the deepest scar. They had thought they could take everything from me, everything I'd built, everything I held dear. But in the end, it wasn't the money, the reputation, or the betrayal that hurt the most. It was the fact that they had stolen something I couldn't get back, the trust I once had in them. But eventually, justice was served, and they both paid the price for what they had done. Thank you for watching.